kind of shared on this, from the time we shared on this conversation, there was a clear sense that people are in pain and they're asking, how can we be able to walk through? And that's why we are very honored today to have Raymond Mugisha. Raymond is the MD of Afri-Accent company. He is a chartered risk analyst, and he's a fellow of the American Academy of Financial Management and holds a master's degree in economic policy and management. And he also holds a bachelor's degree in agriculture engineering from Makerere. Raymond has spent the better part of his career supporting people in managing risks and being able to kind of navigate challenging risks, as he's going to advise us today. And I think more importantly, Raymond is a businessman. He has run a business and he knows what it means to run a business amidst challenging times. Abid, who is our co-host today, is equally a businessman, and he knows what it means to run a business when things appear turbulent. But I believe that all of us have a very personal story to how this has actually played out for you. So Abid, I'll request that you invite Raymond to come and share with us today.
All right. Thank you, Ronald, very much for that introduction. Good morning, Raymond. If you could.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Morning. Welcome, Raymond. If you could also share your video with us so we can be able to see you.
Yeah, I was wondering whether my connection will support it because I happen to be up country, but let me try and see.
Okay. Inflation is one of the things that is actually hitting the economy the last 12 months, which is economy which is also been recovering, trying to recover from the COVID effect. So Raymond, good morning.
Morning.
With the introduction that we have had, maybe you can just tell us a bit of yourself, what you're doing currently and where you're working.
Okay, good morning, everyone, once again. My name is Raymond Mugisha, and as Ronald has said, I am I run a consulting firm called Afri-Accent Risk Management Solutions, and I also try to sell other things like fuel on retail basis. And I have been working as a business advisor for a good number of years. And I have worked since 2012 as a risk management consultant, advising businesses about how to enhance their strategies and to mitigate threats that they face. Now, of course, it so happens that we are going through one of the biggest threats that most businesses have faced in the recent past. And I am happy to be with you this morning to share with you and also learn from you as we interact to know how we can navigate the challenges of the current times. Yes, I have been working since 2005, so I have been trying to make sense of a number of things for clients and for myself for the last 17 years. So this morning, I'll be happy to share with you some of the things that I consider as essential in the current situation we are in around inflation. And of course, related to inflation, the current rise in interest rates, which affects some of the people who have loans and those who intend to take loans to help them to emerge out of this challenge. Yes, I think Ronald has really introduced me quite well. I don't think I need to repeat any of the things he said. So I will surely wait when we are ready, then maybe we can launch into the content of what I have to share with us.
Okay, if we go straight into it, maybe we can ask, everybody's talking about inflation, but what would be what is inflation at? And how do we know that what are the signs of inflation in the economy currently?
All right, so maybe we then get into the actual content of today's presentation, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Ronald, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, one thing which Raymond did mention is that we started working on the same day, very first day. So I started the first day Raymond entered the workplace. I also entered it. So we go way back. Raymond, it's such an honor to have you here. Please get to your presentation.
Thank you, Ronald. Thank you, Ronald. I am trying to share my screen, and I don't know if people are seeing it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, okay, that's good. That's good.
Maybe you can start the slide, the presentation.
Okay, right. Just a moment. Okay, so they usually, I don't know if I should do a full screen. Sometimes I do the full screen and I discover the slides can't move. If they don't move, you let me know. Then I will readjust them to the other view.
All right,
today we're going to be discussing about inflation and the related challenges for us as business people, rising interest rates, and how our businesses should respond. Definitely, this is a very complicated discussion because the realities of the challenges are going to be affecting different people in different ways, depending on the businesses they do, the sectors they are playing in, and actually the situation or the position they were found in when the challenge started. And of course, the challenge has come on the heels of an already existing problem because we are still battling COVID-19 effects and trying to recover. And then this happened. The Russians decided to attack Ukraine, and then we know what happened. We don't only know it, we are living it, we are experiencing it. But we're going to basically go to the basics. I don't know if I have left my cover page and gone to the introduction. If the slides are showing that, then I'll proceed. If they are not, then I will have to get out of the full screen mode.
We are still seeing the first page.
You're still seeing the first page.
Okay, now we're seeing the second. Okay.
I'm going to ask that you allow me to present in this kind of view.
That is okay. We are able to view it.
All right. Okay. So basically, what is inflation? I'm going to try and avoid being academic because the academic content and everything around what we would be studying in class is well known by a number of people, by many of us. But we are just going to try to bring down this discussion to the realities of our situation. So what basically is inflation? Inflation would basically be increase in prices over a given period of time. It is the increase in our cost of living. Now, one of the things about Uganda is that we are, I think, one of the blessed countries. The cost of living, for people may not actually appreciate it, but the cost of living around Kampala is, I think, one of the fairest, for example, in Africa. And I think the reason is because we have plenty of food. So people can easily get food, and that determines the number of things. So our cost of living is really relatively low under normal circumstances. Now, these are not normal circumstances, so our cost of living has shot up because of some factors like the rising prices of fuel and other things. Now, inflation can be in different forms. There is inflation that rises because of a shortage in supply, when the things we need to consume are not being supplied in enough quantities, and then the population has too much money that is being used to chase few goods in the market. So naturally, because supply is short, the prices rise because many people have the money to buy the few goods available, the few commodities available. Then there is also where the cost of production increases because people are demanding higher wages and other inputs of production, such as raw materials, basically having the prices shoot up. Now the price then increases because the producers have to pass on the costs to the consumers. And then we have inflation. Now there is also where basically people are demanding higher wages to keep up with rising costs, where people demand higher wages to keep up with rising costs, and businesses have to raise their prices in order to offset their rising wage costs. But basically, this is a bit academic. The bottom line is that if we have increase in costs of living, if the prices of the things we consume are escalating, then we have inflation, and it's the practical situation that we are living in now. Now, the other thing that I want us to basically understand, apart from inflation, is what is around the interest rates. And one of the key things about interest rates that I want us to discuss this morning is the central bank rate. The central bank rate basically is a rate that is usually set by the central bank, in our case, Bank of Uganda, and it is set basically in view of what the central bank forecasts as future inflation and other economic considerations. So it uses it basically to manage and influence the market for different positive reasons. Now, this interest rate is what the central bank usually charges to banks, to commercial banks, the ones we go to borrow money from, is basically what the central bank uses to charge them when they want to borrow. Now, of course, commercial banks usually go to the central bank to borrow money when they have short-term needs and they are in a challenged position and they need quick bailouts. They go to the central bank and get money. And when they go there, they have to give collateral to the central bank. Usually this collateral will come in form of, for example, government securities. And so the commercial banks will go to the central bank, giving their government securities like treasury bills and bond, and then get money from the central bank at the central bank rate. The interest rate they charge them is that central bank rate. Now, so I'm sorry, we are going to be flashing basically struggling inflation and interest rates. But then after that brief introduction of what inflation is and what the central bank rate is, then we can get back to how do these things affect us? And the first thing we should ask ourselves is, how does inflation impact us? Of course, one of the things about inflation is that it devalues your money. So if you had in your bank account 100,000 shillings before the inflation phase set in, then now it is no longer worth what it was. So ideally, the value of your money has been eroded, because what you could purchase with your 100,000 maybe 1 year ago is not what you can purchase. Well, the best example we can give is the fuel you put in your tank when you drive to the gas station. Like if you could fill your tank with 200,000 1 year ago, today maybe you will need 300,000 or even more. Now, the other thing about inflation, the impact it has, is that usually it hits the low-income earners and small businesses more. So basically, it hurts the poor more than it hurts the relatively rich. And this is because the low-income earners and small businesses, and generally people, I am not using poor in a derogatory manner really, but just people who don't have as much money as the others. Most of their incomes are spent on necessities. Basically, people who have little money spend most of their income on necessities, and they must continue to spend on them. So you cannot say because there is inflation, people at home are not going to eat. People will continue eating. People will need to continue moving and spending on fuel and things like that. So most of the people with low incomes spend their money almost exclusively on necessities, which they cannot let go, which they can't stop spending on. And then they normally lack a buffer. They don't have a buffer to cushion them to say now that prices are rising. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but I have a huge bank balance. I can always fill my tank, my fuel tank, even then, and continue doing things the normal way. They don't have that buffer. So the poor are hurt more. because basically their income has almost always exclusively been going to procuring essentials, and they have to keep buying them anyway. So they don't have a lot of room to evade trouble in times of inflation. Now, the other thing is that inflation is a self-feeding situation. When inflation accelerates and stays high, people basically expect that the prices will continue to shoot up in the short to medium term. So you will see people beginning to press their employers for higher wages. You will see producers demand higher prices for their products. And then this causes more inflation. So basically, because the inflation has kicked in, it escalates because the perceptions of the population basically are such that people will actually play into its hands. The workers want higher wages, the producers instantly demand higher prices for their products, and therefore we have higher inflation. Now, the other thing is that it leads to rise in interest rates. Now, the rise in interest rates is not really something that inflation causes on its own. When basically inflation happens, what the central bank does, or what Bank of Uganda, in our case of Uganda, does, is that it tries to manage the money in circulation. And one of the ways they do that is to raise interest rates. Interest rates are raised by raising or increasing the central bank rate, the CBR that I talked about a few minutes ago. So what the central bank does is that it increases that central bank rate, the CBR, or the rate it is at which it is lending money to the commercial banks. Now, when that happens, is then the commercial banks also must include that increase into the interest rate that they offer to the market. Now, why that happens is because the central bank is trying to discourage people from borrowing. Because when the rates are raised, then you're discouraged from borrowing. When people are discouraged from borrowing and take less loans or fewer loans, then the money in circulation reduces. People are less able to purchase things. It's basically, it's like they are trying to curb demand. Now, when they curb demand and the demand falls, then the prices are supposed to also fall. So the central bank increases rates basically for that purpose. Now, for example, was it last week or the other week? The central bank communicated a 1% increment in the central bank rate. Now, what means is that commercial banks will also increase the rates on your loans by that same 1%. That's why you saw most banks actually sending out flyers announcing that increment. But we're going to talk about that maybe a bit more in a few minutes later. Now, the other thing is that inflation lowers the debt of servicing our loans. It lowers the cost rather of servicing our loans. What that means is that if you had a loan where your installment was 200,000 Uganda shillings, for example, then you will find that actually when there is inflation, you're going to be still paying your 200,000 as the loan installment, but in effect, the value of the 200,000 is now much less. Or for example, if for example, you are a producer, if you were producing, let's say you're producing telephone handsets, just as an example. I know we don't produce those ones here really, but if you're producing telephone handsets, the number of telephone handsets you would need to sell to raise your 200,000 to go and pay your loan will be less now because the price of your phones has increased. So you will have to sell fewer loans to be able to raise the money to take to the bank and pay your loan installment. So basically the cost, inherently the cost of debt service is lower. You're basically giving the bank less money in practical terms. The other thing is, which I think would maybe interest us as Ugandans, because Ugandans are real estate lovers, is that inflation actually can, in a way, boost real estate. And this is because real estate is basically always used as a hedge against inflation. People basically invest in real estate because they know it is very easy to play around with it. If there is inflation, they can easily increase the rent. Of course, the reality of the challenge is that you will increase the rent, but people may be defaulting because they don't have the money anyway. But basically, it can boost real estate in the sense that it is easy to manipulate the rental charge. The landlord can just wake up and decide to increase the rent. Now, of course, when you increase it, but when people are even already struggling to pay you the smaller rent dues, then you are only maybe expanding your balance sheet, saying that you demand money, basically recording what we call receivables. But basically, theoretically speaking, it should be able to boost real estate. I want us to quickly rush through these basic, the basics and the introductory definitions and the foundational knowledge. Then we'll go to what can we react like. So let's go back to what CBR is really and what rising interest rates imply for us at the basic level. For example, if you are borrowers, now the rate that the bank usually charges on your loan is dependent on mainly, broadly speaking, two things: the central bank rate, and then the risk factors or the basically circumstances that contribute to the risk around your loan, the risk the bank is taking by giving you money. Now, this basically can be broken into the risk you pose to the bank as a person. That's, for example, why you go to the bank, they will ask you for your, it's called the report that comes from basically the people who maintain data about how we pay our loans. Basically, they will ask to see your own repayment history, how many of your checks have bounced and things like that. The credit reference bureau information. Basically, they are trying to look at your uniqueness as what risk do you pose to the bank. And sometimes, of course, they will also have other considerations around you, your unique characteristics. The bank will ask you, how old are you? Their considerations, in practice, it is known that people, the risk they pose to the lender basically depends on their age. If you're so young or maybe too young or too old, the risk could be higher. There are unique characteristics of borrowers that the bank considers. The general trend of loan repayments by borrowers in the market. That's the credit risk within the market. If you have a country where people generally don't pay loans well, the interest rates in that country are usually high. Now, if, for example, I go with Ronald to the bank and we each want a loan of 100,000 shillings, and the bank therefore is going to give out 200,000 shillings as loans. If the bank's target is to earn interest income of 20,000, it would mean that if everything was perfect, they should charge me 10% and get and just get 10,000 from me, and charge Ronald 10% and get 10,000 from him, and they have their income of 20,000. But if, for example, they perceive that one of us is highly likely not to pay them, then what happens is that they will actually increase the rate. So if, for example, the situation is so bad and they know that one of us, the chances of not paying by one of us are close to 100%, then they will actually increase the rate on our loans to 20%, so that they are assured that the one who is going to pay is going to cover the entire 20,000 interest income that they want to get from the loan, the money they give us. So, but that is simplistic. Of course, the model that the bank applies is much more complex and averages out many things. So we have your unique characteristics as a borrower, the general trend of loan repayments by borrowers in the market, and then the base rate. That base rate, which is a rate below which the bank will not lend, is in this case the central bank rate. So generally, the rate that they will finally charge you on your loan, which we are saying is R, is equal to the central bank rate plus a factor X. That X is the function of the things we have been talking about, your own credibility as a borrower. It can take on things that are collateral characteristics. You know, what are you pledging for the loan? What business do you deal in? Is your business too risky? And other factors, many of them, some of them could be external from you. As I have told you, there are considerations about the general market and how people pay loans in the market. So whenever you go to the bank, basically, and you're negotiating a rate for your loan, and you should always negotiate. I worked in banking actually for a number of years. Between 2009 and 2014, I was a bank, and one of the things that shocked me is that clients really rarely negotiated for the rate. They maybe some clients don't know, or they would feel like the bank is helping them to give them money, but you're supposed to actually negotiate your interest rate. And when you're negotiating your interest rate, basically you're trying to ask the bank to adjust this X because the CBR cannot be adjusted. So you're actually trying to convince the bank, for example, that you are a very good borrower. You know, that your business is so good. Basically you present a good business opportunity for them. So they should give you a low rate. You're trying to ask them to reduce this X factor in this equation. Now, after you have taken the loan, then your fate is sealed. So when your fate is sealed and the central bank changes CBR, then your loan installment will have to change unless you have negotiated a fixed rate loan. And fixed rate loans basically will be negotiated for most of the times for big borrowers, for big loan facilities. But if you have an ordinary loan, which is on which the interest rate is supposed to change when circumstances change, then what happens is that when the CBR is changed by the central bank, then the bank should also adjust your interest rate on your loan. The bank usually doesn't really have to go looking at everyone's loan. The bank uses a system. In the system is such that the bank just puts in the central bank rate, the base rate is, the central bank rate is, then automatically every loan will now adjust and have the rate existing on the loan as the CBR plus the X, which you either negotiated or you accepted without negotiating. So basically, when that happens, many clients will not notice that actually the rates have changed because the installment never changes. The installment of the client never changes because the banking system is also set such that when the rate changes, what then adjusts, basically when the interest rate changes, what adjusts is not your loan installment size, but the tenure of the loan. So for example, if we were having a loan where you're paying 500,000 shillings per month, and it was supposed to be repaid over 12 months. Now, if the central bank rate has been increased and therefore the interest on your loan has been increased as well, then you may end up having a scenario where, for example, you will pay an extra 200,000 in the 13th month. So ideally, your loan tenure is the one which changes and stretches a little bit, but you will keep paying the same. So for clients who don't take take notes about the communication coming from the bank and such things, then you will continue paying the same installment. Then at the end, when you think you have finished your loan, they will be telling you, but you have a 200,000 or 300,000 extra that you should pay. And then you may actually start wondering how it is coming up. But that's what happens. The change in the rate does not change your installment figure. It adjusts the length of time over which you're going to pay. Now, so generally, when the central bank changes CBR, then the rate has to change. Now, like recently, when they increased CBR by 1%, the bank would have communicated to you that your interest rate has also been changed by 1%. Sorry, I think this is a repetition. Okay, now I think this is basically for purposes of the time we have, I think this should be enough of what we should discuss about the basic definitions and the other things related to interest rates and to inflation. So I don't know if there is any question now or if I should proceed and handle the questions at the end.
Raymond, we can proceed. Just ask people, in case you have any questions as Raymond presents, please do post the questions in chat. We shall come to you. There have been two comments, but they're not real questions at the moment. So we can just continue. And I think this is what people are here for, what to do now that the CB inflation is increasing. Please do continue.
So one of the things, and I know from practice that a number of us will have already been trying out some of these things. And also the other thing is that practically speaking, some of the solutions will apply, some of the suggestions may apply to some businesses and not to others. So the main purpose of the remaining part of this discussion is basically to motivate our minds, to challenge our minds to think about what solutions may be available to us and what we can do to address the challenges we are facing. So generally there is it's not like we are going to shoot bullets to give solutions that will basically work straight for everyone, and that tomorrow you can have your challenges addressed. But we are supposed to actually examine our mind to basically probe our minds and see what kind of solutions can we have depending on the unique circumstances of our businesses and the situation we are in. And one of the things we can do is, for example, to rework our cash flows. Now you see, for every business, actually even for individuals, basically you will have a balance sheet. Now a balance sheet is basically a presentation of your assets and your liabilities, and then what we call capital. Now, then we have what we call the income statement, but for purposes of our discussion, I'm just going to say our cash flow. Our cash flow is basically about money getting to us and then getting away from us by being spent on the things we want to spend on, either for business building or for our own livelihood. So we have the balance sheet and then we have our cash flow. Now, our cash flow is basically derived from the balance sheet. It is the balance sheet that gives us money. The assets you have and the liabilities you have and the capital you have put aside is basically what you use to generate money. Now, one of the things is that we can look at in times like this is whether we can rework our cash flow. And I think I will use myself as an example. A few days ago, I was at a client, and this client is a financial institution, is a bank actually to be precise. So during the meeting, it came out that they have a product, and this product is like a hybrid between a saving account and a fixed deposit account. So how this account of theirs works is that you bring money and put it in your savings account, and then it will begin, they will pay you interest on your saving of around 13%. You can even negotiate it further if you present good condition, but around 13% per year, and it is accrued on a daily basis. And you can actually negotiate and have your interest paid to you every month, transferred to your account. So when the discussion was going on, then I cross-checked myself and I was asking myself, how many idle assets do I have? For example, how many plots of land have I bought that I will not really be developing in the near future? And they are seated there, and I am running broke, but I have a big balance sheet which cannot generate money. Or maybe I have maybe 2 incomplete houses. I don't even hope to finish them anytime soon because the times are difficult. So I was asking myself, do I need to have 2 incomplete houses and 3 plots which are not developed and lying idle? or would it be better for me to say, okay, now let me sell one house, let me dispose of 2 plots of land, get this money. Let's assume maybe if it is, for example, if it is maybe 200 million, just as an illustration, I put it on this account and then agree with the bank that every month you're going to put my 1% or 1.25% on my account, and every month it goes there as cash. Would it be better for me that way, or would it be better for me to keep my balance sheet, huge balance sheet of assets that cannot generate cash? And one of the things that I, after that meeting at the clients, that I thought about is that actually it is very common for us, especially in Uganda, because we love to buy property, we love to buy land, that actually we sometimes find that our businesses are constrained because we have maybe overinvested in land which we cannot develop today. So it does not really contribute to our cash flow. It is just seated there. And sometimes you will hear people saying, but the land is appreciated. But that appreciation does not help you in times like this, because appreciation of your land really is going to only be relevant to your cash flow if you sell the land. But before then, you can be stuck. Now, the other thing that I noticed, for example, is that if I wanted to borrow from the same bank and I had that kind of saving account in that bank, I could go there and tell them, please lend me money against my deposit. And it would, most likely they would give it to me in a day or maybe at most 2 days. But if I went with my plots of land today and I want a loan, then I have to get valuation reports. So basically it would be more complicated and not solve my problem. So I came actually from that meeting thinking about the value of my balance sheet in a difficult time like this. Of course, in ordinary times it is okay. It is okay if I am not financially having any challenges. It is okay for me to accumulate some assets and leave them there if I am comfortable. But in times when financial challenges are rising and I have problems with inflation, with the escalating prices, with paying people's salaries. You know, someone was joking recently that we are going to starting to borrow to pay taxes. You know, if for example there are challenges like that, then can I basically rework my cash flow? But by just rearranging my balance sheet, because you see, if I went and sold one of the houses and sold some of the plots and put the money in the bank, I have not lost anything. I've just converted my assets from property to cash, and this cash is able to pay me money. So basically, this I'm not saying people should do this. What I'm saying is that we need to think about how we can rearrange our balance sheet to be able to improve our cash flow. Because the biggest challenge in this time is our cash flow, really. It's not how big your balance sheet is. If you have a huge building to rent out and it's empty, then you are going to be constrained because you can't pay if you can't even pay your people's salaries. If you're employing people, you basically cannot make ends meet. Things become complex. So the most pressing need for us now is to grow our cash flow, to improve our cash flow, have more money coming to us. So we can do that by rearranging our balance sheet, so that we have a balance sheet that is able to give us much more money than we have been getting. So you can just rearrange your balance sheet. And of course, when the difficult times are gone, you can reaccumulate your assets the way you want them. You can basically get back, if you're a lover of property and houses, and you can go back and reaccumulate the way you would wish. But during difficult times, we can arrange our balance sheet. Yes, please.
Just reminder, if we can maybe finish our presentation in the next 15 minutes, so we can start taking questions. I'm seeing quite a number that are coming in chat.
Perfect.
Or do you take them one by one, or do you want to finish the presentation?
No, it's okay. Let me finish because there are not many slides ready. Then we can take the questions.
All right.
Okay. Then the other thing is that businesses can prioritize what you make. You can prioritize what you make or the service you provide. And this will be based on what you have from experience. You know, sales fast. if, for example, you have a business that is providing different kinds of services, or you basically have a business that produces products, different products, you know from experience what sells fast. So you basically can examine your products and services to determine which have the strongest demand and the healthiest margins, identify what is fast moving and prioritize it. And you know, sometimes you will even go to these huge supermarkets, and you find that some shelves are actually empty because some of the things are being taken very fast. It's like the supermarket has to keep restocking certain items because clients are picking them very fast, while other things are actually there and risking even being damaged from overstaying on the shelves. So if you have a business that has the capacity to produce different things, or is manufacturing different products, offering different services, go back and examine your products and services, know which is under the strongest demand, what clients need more, and prioritize it. Basically, you can readjust back to your pre-inflation model after you have evaded the problems related to this season. Now, the other thing is that many businesses could decide to do what we call spending visibility. This is about analyzing your expenses to know what you spend money on, how does your money get spent, what do you spend it on, you know, and which activities of your business consume the most money. For example, you can ask yourself questions like, do you have more rented space than you need, for example? Could you reorganize your office and occupy smaller space? Are there activities that you or your staff regularly engage in and spend on, but which do not make reasonable contribution to the income? Sometimes you find that traditionally, we have been doing business some way. So we have a number of activities that we are accustomed to, our staff are accustomed to, but in reality, they may not actually be generating a lot of income for us. So we may need to adjust those ones. Do some of your business processes demand so much money, yet they could be modified to become cheaper? For example, you can find that you have regular movements of your staff between different locations to deliver documents, or maybe to perform different activities. And maybe you can cut those through engaging courier services and things like that, so that you basically you reduce your cost on transport for staff and things like that. And the other thing is that we need to take note of what we call strategic and non-strategic expenditure. Now, naturally, in this difficult time, people seek to reduce costs. But this cost reduction should not be broad-based. You don't just say, I want to cut my costs by 20%, and then you begin slashing every cost line by 20%, because the danger in that is that you can end up actually reducing strategic costs. The costs which basically, which we would call is like the costs which are spent as sowing seeds that should sprout and give you returns. You don't do that. Basically, what we should be doing is that we should analyze our costs and know what is strategic and not, and those which are not strategic. So we pull resources from services that basically offer less returns and redirect them to high return alternatives. You basically have to spend in the right places, spend in the places that feed your success, spend on strategic costs. So, but then again, you don't just reduce costs and hurt your long-term survival strategy. For example, people may want to cut costs, but you don't want to wake up and say, I'm going to cut salaries, just suddenly reduce people's salaries, because that actually could affect you in a sense that people will just lose morale. They are also hard pressed like you. You're saying you want to slash their salaries. It may actually ultimately work against you. Maybe someone would say, no, I had 7 staff. I cannot manage them anymore. I'm going to remain with 5. I think that would even be better than saying I'm going to reduce everyone's salary by 30%. So you do logical balance between short-term cash generation and long-term benefit-focused investments. You basically have to survive without killing your business, because if you cut the costs on a broad-based approach, you might actually compromise your own strategic direction. The other thing is that you have to understand and manage what drives your spending. You have to ask your questions about what rates, what prices do you pay for goods and services? Are they the best prices you can find? Can you renegotiate your prices? And of course, in a time like this, it will be difficult because people already want to keep their prices high. But you need to ask yourself what advantage you have in negotiating, what negotiating power you have. Can you renegotiate your prices during this time? Then you also need to ask yourself, what is your consumption, the quantity, the volumes of your business input, the volumes of and quantities of things that you use in your business. Can they be reduced? Can you basically adjust and reduce them? Now, the questions include what drives the prices you pay and your consumption. Are the cost drivers within your control? Basically, the things that drive what you pay, that drive the prices you pay and the volumes or the quantities you consume. Those cost drivers, are they within your control? What things are within your control that you can change and adjust? And if they are there, then you can adjust them. For example, if you have the advantage that you usually procure very huge volumes of things, now could be a good time to negotiate quantity discounts. The other thing is that you can eliminate non-value adding work. Non-value adding work. I think the best example I thought about is concerning people who do run like hotels, lodging and accommodation services. And you can basically have an approach where clients can tell you whether they need their rooms cleaned or not, because sometimes actually you don't have to do it every day. Do they need their room cleaned? Do they need their towels replaced every day? Or maybe some actually can shock you and say, no, me, I can use mine for 3 days. Or me, I don't want my room cleaned today. I don't even want to leave my room. I'm staying in my room, working there today. I don't need it to be cleaned and things like that. So basically, you end up eliminating non-value adding work. This is an example from lodging and accommodation services, but it could be in other sectors as well. The thing is, stay mindful about your pricing. This is basically not about about survival of the inflation itself. It's about what happens after. We are all tempted to raise our prices, but you have to be careful not to hurt your business with uncalculated price increments. You must focus on your customers. You ask yourself how your costs are being affected by inflation. Our supplies or labor significantly more expensive. Look at competitors. What are they doing? You don't hurt yourself by taking moves that will put you at very big disadvantages in the competition, you know. And then the cash, the ability to hold prices steady will depend on what is happening in your cash flow. And if you can hold your prices steady because you have a comfortable cash position, you could actually end up having an advantage over your competition. There is something called strategic stockpiling, but this is one of the things we said also causes inflation to rise higher. Using inventory as a physical hedge, that you can order your inventory now and keep, and basically it's ordering inventory and keeping it so that you don't have to incur more to procure the same inventory in future. And then you are therefore able, as the inflation continues, for you, you're able to charge competitive prices because the cost of your inputs was lower than for the competition. If you have a credit line, for example, you can utilize it and do this. You basically, and this works very well. For example, if you're dealing in essential goods and you are assured of sales. Otherwise, if you borrow today and you're not assured of sales, again, it could be a problem because people's spending capacity has reduced. You don't want to be over-indebted. And then you are not assured that what you are investing in as a business is going to sell easily and enable you to pay your loans. So basically, strategic stockpiling works well for people who are dealing in essential commodities, which you are sure they're going to be bought. Things like food and things like that, the things that people must continue spending on, things like food, things like fuel, and medicines and things like that. And yeah, this is the brief presentation. I think I will. The questions might enrich the discussion more. So let me now give room for the questions to be handled. Just give me a second. I need to pick my notebook and be able to write them.
Okay, thank you very much, Raymond. And thank you everybody who has been posting the questions in chat. As we wait for Raymond to get his notebook, please do keep the questions coming in. And I'm also seeing some people are actually replying to some of the questions already, which is very good. You could also, please, in chat, you can introduce who you are, mention who you are. You may find one of your clients is in chat here. For example, I see Dr. William there, who has a very good diagnostic center in Bukoto. These are things that you can talk about, and we go forward. So, Raymond, now that you're back, first one was a comment. This was from Moses, who was saying that as much as our cost of living is low, but still it is hurting. The inflation is hurting a few people. For example, someone in Chikoni who couldn't afford painkillers and they lost somebody. Yeah, this is an acknowledgement that yes, the inflation is, as much as our cost of living is still low compared to other countries, but for a lot of people, it is still hurting. There's a question from Rosalind Akol. You said at one point you mentioned that you can sell off properties, and her comment is that, but you say properties are used as a hedge to inflation. Why should we then be selling properties? Do you want to take that now?
Yeah, sure. Let me take that one now. Now, you see, if we say that properties are a hedge against inflation,
yeah,
then that only applies if you're willing to actually, basically, if you're willing to basically suffer through this inflation and retain them as a hedge for future inflation. But because if I talked about properties that are not able to generate cash. Basically, they are only a hedge if they can help you to generate cash. I said that when you have property, you can easily increase rent, for example. You can easily increase rent in time of inflation and be able to basically protect yourself that way. But if your properties are not able to generate that rent, then they are not even actually serving as a hedge. So you may have them, but they are not serving the purpose of a hedge. They are also not serving a purpose of giving you income. Then they are just idle there. They are good to have, yes. And it's a comfortable place. You see, there is a comfort of, they provide a sense of security. So if in the worst case scenario, I can even sell my plots of land and have money. Now, I would think that in a crisis situation like this, maybe that's the purpose they are supposed to serve. But of course, if you're emotionally attached to the properties, I know it can be quite challenging. Because if you're so emotionally attached to your properties, then it becomes difficult for you to say, let me sell this house, take the money to the bank and be getting my interest every month. It will be difficult. But in reality, if you're a business person, I think at the risk of sounding maybe strange, I think one of the things as a business person is that you should not be emotionally attached to some of the, but of course it depends on the risk appetite you have, but you should not be so emotionally attached to your assets. You should be willing to keep shuffling between your assets for purposes of growth. So if you're that comfortable that you can shuffle between your assets, because you can always buy the land again, actually. If you actually grow your cash flow comfortably, you can buy the land again. So yes, they are a hedge against inflation, but if they cannot generate income, which you can maybe adjust by increasing rent, then maybe they are better off being used in an alternative way to generate income. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, as from what I get, it means you keep saying, you're saying that probably depends on the situation that you're in. So if you have property that is actually making you money, then it is good to actually keep it. If the property is just idle, then you can consider selling it to generate income in these times. One thing that is there is that a lot of Ugandans do have a lot of idle properties. You can find somebody with 100 acres of land and they're asking you for 10,000 shillings for food. So you wonder, why do you have 100 acres of land? Why don't you just get some of this and actually utilize it to generate income? There's a question from Bruce at Kwasa. This one was a bit unclear. What are mostly required when you're presenting your X? I think this is when you're talking about the CBR. Maybe Bruce, you can chat again. Oh, Bruce, are you still here? You can unmute and let us know what exactly you're meaning by your question. Okay, as we wait for Bruce, there's a question from Tinamasiko, also Bruce. Is it safe to consider opening a new small-scale business in this season? If yes, what would be the critical considerations?
Yeah, I think it is actually okay to open a new he says a small-scale business. The key considerations, I think, would be about what are you going to sell. If you're going to sell something that is essential, I think it is actually going to be safe. And now, if you're going to actually be a solution to this problem, because someone could actually be also opening a business that is a solution to the existing challenges around inflation. You can see like people who opened up businesses to do deliveries during COVID. You know, it was strategic. There's a problem, there's a crisis, someone comes in to solve the problem. But generally, the bottom line is, if you're going to start a business now and you have your capital, the key question would be, what basically are you going to provide? What are you going to deal in? Is it essential? Are you sure that people really who are constrained with about spending are going to be willing to put money on what you're going to provide? Because people's spending, the purchasing capacity, people's ability to purchase and spend on goods and services is compromised now. So if you bring a new business, you have to ask yourself if people really will find it necessary to put their money on what you're selling during this time, when they are basically struggling for the basics. It's something that you have to consider. Of course, the other thing you would have to consider is about questions about what buffer do you have in terms of capital. If you put in your capital now in a difficult moment, how much flexibility does your capital position allow you in terms of if for example, you went in and you didn't register as many sales as you anticipated, are you going to be able to survive? Do you have enough capital to basically take the shock if you went in and actually things didn't work as you thought? So what are you going to sell, and how much capital do you have? How much basically, when I say how much capital do you have, it's going to how much risk do you want to take with what you have, the capital you have in your place, whether it is savings or whatever it is. How much are you willing to risk it in this difficult time? And then what are you going to sell? Are people really going to be pushed to buy your goods or services in a time when their purchasing capacity is compromised?
Yeah, indeed, like you have said, Raymond, you have to make sure that you can start a business, but you have to take those things into considerations. Do people need your product or service? And also, do you have enough money in case things don't go the way you anticipate? You need to look at the needs of the clients and needs of the customers. Don't just open for the sake of opening a business. And when you're opening a business, usually it's good practice to have 3 to 6 months of cash available to take care of your expenses in that time, because business in the beginning rarely goes the way you anticipate. There's again another question from Roslyn. I think you said cash value is going down, so why should I turn more assets into cash? I feel you have answered this.
I think yes, but maybe to add something else is that you have to change your assets into cash, because you cannot do without cash. You see, even if the cash value is going down, but you still need cash. So you can't survive without it. You still need it. The cash value is going down, but you actually need more cash. In practically speaking, for your business surviving, growing, you need more cash. But of course, if you can survive without the cash, then you can keep your assets. The solution would do, if you think you can survive and attain your strategic objectives, you can keep with the assets, and it wouldn't hurt. But for someone who has a high risk appetite, wants to grow, or is cash constrained, then we can think about converting the assets to cash.
Indeed. Also, for your business, you also have to take in considerations. Why is the business failing? Is it because of inflation? Or is it because there's a hole in there? You may get more money, you may convert your assets into cash to pour into the business, yet there are issues in the business itself. So you may be pouring money into a hole. So before even putting money, find out what is the problem with the business.
That's right.
Okay. I think this was answered. Carol said, I see challenges with getting buyers because we're facing the same circumstance, inflation at a particular time. Yes, but then there are certain commodities that people always buy regardless of the economic situation. So you have to make sure that you get the right buyers. Then Dr. William Worodria has asked, how should one handle shares invested in a company that is not performing in this environment?
I think that also depends. That depends on maybe on someone's current financial position. If you're not hard pressed, actually, now would be a time to even maybe buy more shares. That's what they say. That when things are bad, actually, maybe is when people want to buy shares. For those who are risk takers, they want to buy shares when things are gloom because everyone wants to sell, and so they buy cheap. So I would say, if you believe that this company has a future, then keep the shares. Because this is a temporary situation. The business will rebound and the company will make money. So if you can retain those shares and comfortably survive, then let not the current situation cause you to sell off those shares, unless really there is a very stringent cash constraint on your side. Otherwise, retain those shares, and the future might turn out to be bright.
Okay. Julius Masaba agrees with you, says don't sell shares, a long-term investment strategy, unlike bonds or treasury bills. There's a question. I'm seeing Robert Mande has his hand up. Maybe you can unmute, Robert.
Thank you so much for this morning knowledge. My question is, as a landlord, in order to maintain the cash flow, is it advisable to reduce on your rent or to maintain the rental rates than increasing, so that you chase out the old tenants, expecting the new ones? I've seen many landlords who have vacated tenants, expecting new ones in new ones, and their houses are now empty for more than 7 months. So on my side, for me, what I did, I don't know, but I had to maintain the rate and those to understand the people what they are going through. And I say, no, let's maintain this rate for the next 3 years. because I don't know if it's advisable, but on my side, than having empty house, no cash flow, you are expecting from nothing. Is it advisable to do that? Though I'd already done the thing. I think let me just ask for others who are landlords here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Robert. That landlord question is a lot in chat. Basically, in this particular environment, should the landlord reduce, increase, or maintain their rates?
I think strategically speaking, actually, this is basically a strategy question. If you have had tenants who you have had a good relationship with, and historically you know that they have been actually paying you well, and they are reliable, I would think actually staying with your tenants and going through the difficult phase together is a better option than getting strangers on board who you don't know how they are going to pay you. Because you see, the challenge with tenants could be that you do not know why they are even living where they are living, or the place they are living, and coming to your own houses. It could be that they have even defaulted on their rent. I don't know if landlords really usually have enough room to check the tenants, they basically the payment history of the tenants they are getting. So if you get new tenants actually who you don't know their payment history, basically you're taking on a higher risk, because these guys, you don't know what they are going to do with you, with your how they are going to pay. It's better, I think, in my opinion, to retain your tenants at your rates and manage the situation that way, really, than bringing in fresh tenants who could actually be running away from failing to pay elsewhere. But that's my thinking, of course. As you say, you have already taken a move, and I am sure landlords understand the industry well. But strategically speaking, I would think it's not good to take on fresh risk which you don't know, because taking on new tenants is you're taking on a risk you don't even understand, because you don't know these guys. I think it's safer to remain with the guys you have had for some time and wait for the situation to normalize.
Okay, there's a comment by Ezra saying this is a very good engagement, and I appreciate the efforts and support given by Enterprise Many Uganda. As Enterprise, we also thank you, Ezra, for always being here. We also have services that we're offering, for example, a business health check that people can, we are giving this complimentary to people who are attending. We can come to your business and we shall give you a SWOT analysis and tell you how your business is doing and how you can improve what you're doing well. This is complimentary, you can let us know. There's a request from Daisy Nwagaba, who was saying, thank you for the presentation. Could you connect me to your client bank, because I'm one of those with redundant assets, yet I need a cash flow.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe you can, Raymond, you can put that in chat.
Yes, let me put the person can send me a WhatsApp.
Yeah.
This is my WhatsApp number.
Okay, you can put your contacts in chat. There's a question from Julius Masaba. Julius is asking, if the CBR has changed, banks will change their rates too. So for SMEs having running loans with these banks, what they want them to do, why can't the bank also swallow their pride and accept to remain at the rates they agreed on with the SMEs before inflation? After all, let them also know the economy and is not good. Let banks also kuguma and not change their rates. I don't know if this is a question or if it was a comment.
Yeah, maybe something that I can throw clarification about. You see, if banks were to do that, then it would mean that you're asking them actually to swallow the cost. Because you see, when a bank takes deposits, it pays interest on deposits. A bank pays, if they borrow from the central bank, they pay interest on the borrowing. So ideally, what you're asking the bank is that the bank should sacrifice its own, it should sacrifice for you, ideally, which I think is a very difficult one for any business, because they are also already struggling, actually. You see, in this current situation, banks are struggling with bad loans. There are many bad loans. People have not been able to pay. Then they are actually also struggling with the rising interest rates, because when the central bank increases rates, the bank also has to pay higher rates for the monies they use to lend to you. So it becomes it's a bit difficult. Yes, of course, I know that some people say banks make a lot of profits, so why don't they swallow those costs? But of course, it's not as easy for a businessman to swallow the costs on your behalf.
Okay, so before we go to any questions, more questions in chat, I see Charles Lagu, your hand is up. Maybe you can unmute.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abid. Thank you, Enterprise Uganda, and thank you, Raymond. You mentioned a very important point of when we are seeking for credit from commercial banks, we don't actually negotiate. So my question is, what pointers or techniques can you guide us so that when we are going for this credit, we can negotiate for a favorable interest rate for these loans, because it is true that when we go, we don't actually negotiate. So I wanted some guides on key issues so that in the background I go with for the negotiation. The second quick question is, you gave an example of escalating inflation whereby the prices continue to rise sharply and they stay high. The typical example in Uganda is fuel. Me, I've never known any fuel price, if it has gone up, it never comes back down, as you can see, since many years ago. But for our agricultural produce, where many of us are involved, the price never increases. If it increases very slightly, and it never stays there, it falls. So what do you advise the farmers do so that we equally compete? As fuel price increase, also our agricultural price can increase to be able to meet production costs and related costs. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Charles. Now, when you go, basically, when I talked about people do not negotiate their interest rates on loans. And I think the major cause for this is because when people go to borrow from the bank, they go under the impression that they are going to get a favor. So basically, people go under the impression, it's like people go to the bank thinking the bank is going to be favoring them to give them a loan. No, but the bank actually giving you a loan is an opportunity for them to make money. So you approach it the way you approach going to buy anything. You're giving them business, you're the client. Now, when you negotiate, you want to negotiate a loan, of course, there are various considerations. A good client is able to negotiate better terms. And what is a good client? A good client is a client who, for example, has repaid past loans very well. If you have, for example, had a long relationship with the bank, you have been their client for some time, borrowing, paying them well. You have a good business, basically, that presents an opportunity. Because you see, when you have a good business, it's not only that you're going to pay them that loan you're borrowing well, but you are also a prospective client for continuing to grow. You're a business that basically provides growth prospects for yourself and also for the bank. So if you have a good business that you can demonstrate your business is performing well, but you're telling the bank is in the future I will even be able to borrow more and I will be able to pay it well. So basically, the things you use to negotiate a good rate are about, how good you are. I've been with the bank for a long time. I've borrowed in the past and paid my loans well. My business is good. It is growing. In the future, I will be able to present. I will be even a better customer in future than I am now. So basically, you're trying to demonstrate to the bank that they are better off retaining you and treating you well because of the opportunity you present and which you have demonstrated in the past by your conduct, your financial conduct and such things. So, basically you negotiate that rate based on the opportunity you're giving to the bank for the current loan, what you have demonstrated in the past, and what prospects you present in the future. So that the bank basically should be interested in cementing the relationship that you have with them.
Okay, I think related also to Charles's question, there's a question here by William Woodry and a few others who are saying, what consideration should one make before transferring the costs to the customer?
Yeah, before transferring the cost to the customer or increasing the prices, so to speak, there are some the considerations you have. We talked about the competition. You want to think about what is the competition doing. Now, if the competition is charging higher prices, maybe you have room to transfer your costs to the customer. But if the competition is still providing very competitive prices, then transferring your costs to the customer might come with challenges because naturally they will want to go where the prices are still cheaper. The other thing is about substitute. Can customers easily substitute what you provide with alternatives? Because, for example, if I have been a fan of rice and the price of rice shoots too high, I can decide to go and buy ugali. I can buy posho and start eating posho. So basically, before you raise prices, you need to ask yourself whether people have alternatives to what you're providing and can run away. The other thing is about this how much do you value customer, what drives your customer loyalty, the loyalty? Can you increase prices and lose customers? What is the long-term goal, or in terms of how you want to retain your customers? You basically look at your long-term strategy. Do you prefer short-term gains from heightened prices, or you prefer a long-term relationship with your clients where you're seeing them as long-term partners in your business growth? So there are a number of considerations, but mainly is about the custom, how will customers respond to you. We talked about we call them what? We called them some forces. The customers, the costs, how inflation is affecting your costs, and our supplies all labor significantly more expensive, so that you must really change your pricing. The competitors and the cash, your ability to hold your prices steady depends on what's happening with your cash flow. If your cash is constrained, your cash flow is so constrained, you have no option. You basically have to raise your prices. So it's about customers, about how the costs are moving, the costs of your inputs are moving, what competitors are doing, and how much cash do you have to be able to absorb the shock, to hold the prices steady without drowning yourself, basically.
Okay. Thank you for that reply. Just your comments. Monica says property should be leveraged in times like this. If you sell in worst case scenario and end up giving it away for peanuts, yes, you should be careful if you're selling your property to make sure you get the right value. Otherwise, you will not get what you need. This has been handled. Okay, there's a question by Moses Luciva. What is your advice when major is supplying government, and now so as stuck as government is so slow or takes long with a lot of bureaucracy to pay for supplied services?
Yeah, basically the in reality, in our environments, it is very difficult to not trade with government if you want to trade big, because government is the biggest spender. So ideally, my advice would be that you basically have to seek alternative means of survival, because, and some of the means of survival may be what we are talking about. Can you rearrange your balance sheet and survive? Can you look at your costs and modify some of them and survive? Because I wouldn't tell you that you should think of stopping to do business with the government, because you would basically be strategically misfiring. So basically, you would have to look at alternative ways of how you can sustain your cash flow as you wait for government to pay you. Yes, it's a very complicated time for government suppliers, but you must look at the things we have been talking about, alternative ways of surviving as you wait, because government, being a big supplier, also basically it calls the shots. The relationship between you and government basically is somehow one-sided in terms of influence and power, and there are a few things you can usually do.
Yeah. So yes, when supplying government, make sure you have a diversified portfolio for your business. Multiple users. As much as government would be your main cash cow, you can always have a few retail clients here and there to make sure that your daily expenses are sorted. So government supply can actually be, payment can be slow sometimes. It also depends on which department of government you're dealing with. And this is key. So diversify your users, your customers. The question by Rosalind, what type of businesses do well during inflation? This is, before getting to that one, I need to point out that in a number of times like this, when there's a hard economic hardship, there are people that do come up with businesses that seem to be suggesting they are going to solve your problems. Some of these tend to be scams because people are looking for ways of making a quick money. One of these has recently, there's one where people are complaining. It collapsed yesterday. It has been an app where people have been putting in money and getting huge returns. These are scams. If you cannot understand how a business makes money, please avoid it. Otherwise, you will lose your money. People have lost their savings, they have lost their land, they have lost their family property, they haven't lost their businesses. So be very aware of the get-rich schemes, or people will introduce you that this, if you join this business, you'll make your money back very quickly. Do research, understand your business before you go in. So Rosalind's question is, what type of businesses do well during inflation?
I think generally the businesses which sell essentials, essential commodities are things which we must use. So if businesses which sell things which people must continue using, I talked about food, I talked about things like fuel, things like medicines, but essentials, you can't just get away from them. Even if you're hard pressed, you will still have to look for what to eat. If you get sick, you'll have to buy medicine. You know, people have to continue moving. They have to spend on fuel and things like that. Essentials, basically, they are the thing really in such a difficult time. You're assured that you can still do well.
All right. So a question from Francis. Maybe we should wind up in the next 2 minutes. What do you say about treasury bills you already invested with a low interest rate compared to inflation? So he's asking.
I didn't hear that.
What do you say about treasury bills you have already invested in, which had a low interest rate compared to the inflation?
Yeah, in reality, of course, there are people who are going to suffer you will suffer some loss definitely. Well, you could say that you want to offload them. The question is whether you will be able to get people to buy them, to basically be able to offload and get out of those contracts. But me, I would think that me, I would think if I was in your position, I would really hang in. When they expire, I reinvest. It's painful, but I think it's maybe unavoidable.
Okay. So the final question of the day, this is from Julius again. Okay, no, it's not a question, actually, it's a comment. Inflation is good on the for those on the buying side, especially properties. Especially, it says, recall during lockdown, COVID patients sold at giveaway prices since cash was scarce. Of course, it was a do-die case, but can apply to businesses too. Selling properties during inflation is loss-making. This has been tackled. It's usually, I don't know if you want to say anything more about this. This is something that has been tackled already. So say if you have to sell properties during this spread, you have to be careful that you get a good deal. There's a question from Josephine. Are unit trusts affected as treasury bills in this inflation? Raymond.
Hello?
Are unit trusts affected? Due by inflation?
Basically, there is nothing that is unaffected by inflation, because you see, generally, inflation sets the mood for everything. So every investment that we hold or we have made basically is affected. And because you see, everything moves according to the market perceptions and the temperature of the general market, the investment market. So everything that we have invested in basically gets affected. You realize, for example, even governments are defaulting on their own obligations. So basically, everything that we have invested in, the risk is there now. Everything is affected. We can only hope that the situation arises. I think I read Nigeria is restructuring, is even restructuring their national debt. I think we have had our own stories here. So yes, everything basically is affected. If you're already locked into some of these investments, basically you would have to evaluate whether you want to sever your covenants, your investment covenants, and get out and reinvest elsewhere, or you want to stay put. But generally, we are all going to suffer some impact, some negative impact, generally, regardless of what we have invested in.
All right. Thank you very much, Raymond, for your time today. We are having the business health check. I'll put the link there. You can register for a complimentary health check from Enterprise Uganda for your business. You'll be able to receive one of our consultants who will come to your business and give you advice on how to improve. How old does business have to be to get a check? It's open to any business at least 1 to 2 years old, at least, in order to get a business health check. However, it is open to anybody who wants the business health check. We look at your systems, look at all your systems, and advise you on what to do, and your operations, your loans, your strategy, and you get some business advice on that. Thank you very much, Raymond, for your time. Raymond posted his number in chat. Maybe you can also post your email address in case people want to get in touch with you.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Again, see you next Thursday. We shall have another speaker coming on. During the month of November, we are going to have a number of activities to reach out to businesses. We shall be informing you about them. There'll be the Global Entrepreneurship Week. There'll be a number of our conferences here and there where we shall get consultants into a room to come and answer all your questions in one. So please keep glued to your emails. We shall be sending out this information. Raymond has posted his email in chat. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you.